What if I told you that on one planet it is always summer in one hemisphere and always winter in the other? And this has been going on for nearly 2 decades on this planet. On Earth, we have a tilt of roughly 23 degrees, so our seasons are fairly mild. The sun might shine a little stronger for a few months out of the year, but overall, our seasons aren't too extreme. However, there are planets in the universe that have very different seasonal tilts, and in some cases, these tilts can be thousands of degrees. But how does life go on? Well, let's take a look at the planet Uranus. In this video, we will look at how long a day and a year are on Uranus, and why it has such an odd seasonal tilt, and how this could affect any life there. Uranus is one of the sideways planets in the solar system along with its neighbor Saturn. It's not completely sideways, but when compared to Earth, it certainly is. Its tilt is about 98 degrees. This means that over the course of a year, one pole faces the sun for 42 years straight. And then for the next 42 years it faces away from the sun. During the 42-year period of daylight, it is summer in that hemisphere, and during the long winter, it is winter. Scientists believe that this extreme tilt was caused by something huge crashing into Uranus in the past. They also think that this collision knocked Uranus out of its orbital plane. Because of this, Uranus doesn't just spin normally like most planets, it spins on its side. Now they don't know exactly what caused this crash, but they do know that this object was about 4 times the size of Earth. This makes us wonder if anything alive today could survive such extreme conditions. A typical human being cannot survive more than a few minutes without oxygen. So obviously, if you were on Uranus, you would need a spacesuit. But aside from needing a spacesuit, you would also need protection from the cold and heat. Let's start with the cold. According to NASA, the average surface temperature of Uranus is about -224 degrees Celsius. This makes sense considering that Uranus is very far away from the sun. In fact, it's so far away that it takes 84 Earth years for Uranus to orbit the sun just once. That is a very long time to be in one season. So let's say you are on the side of Uranus that is experiencing winter. Winter on Uranus lasts for 21 years. So you won't be able to just hop over to the other side for some summer fun. In fact, if you wanted to experience summer on Uranus, you would have to wait 42 years. You would need some serious supplies to survive for 42 years. You would probably need a space colony, one that is capable of producing its own food and resources. You may have heard of the TV show The Expanse. In this show, the crew travels to other planets in our solar system, including Uranus. One character says, "You ever think about how weird it is that we live in a solar system that has a planet sideways on its axis? Like seriously, what the hell happened there?" Later in the show, they travel to Uranus and they land their ship on the planet. The crew survives on Uranus and they don't seem to experience any issues because of the cold. However, this is just science fiction. On real-life Uranus, you would not survive unless you had a spacesuit. If you wanted to visit the other side of Uranus for summer, you would have to cross through the entire planet. Of course, you couldn't drill through the planet because of the intense pressure and heat, but you could try tunneling through it. Just imagine a tunnel that goes through the middle of Uranus. You could start on the dark side of Uranus and you could tunnel through the planet and come out the other end where the sun is shining. Of course, you would need some sort of vehicle to make this journey. Also, this vehicle would need fuel, and likely some sort of GPS system to navigate. But assuming that you had all this technology, how long would your trip take? Well, according to NASA, Uranus has a diameter of about 51,000 kilometers. So a tunnel going through the middle of Uranus would be about 51,000 kilometers long. If your vehicle could travel at the speed of sound, which on Uranus is about 600 meters per second, it would take about 86 minutes to reach the other side. Of course, you would have to make sure that you didn't get lost. I'm sure that there are many pockets of Uranus that you don't want to wind up in. For example, there are storms on Uranus that last for decades. There are also strong winds that whip around the planet at 900 kilometers per hour. But let's assume that you made it to the other side of Uranus. You may think that you could take off your spacesuit and enjoy some nice summer weather, but you would be wrong. The temperature on the summer side of Uranus is about the same as the winter side. It's around -224 degrees Celsius. So why is it summer on one side and winter on the other side? Well, because of the tilt. One side receives direct sunlight for many years, and the other side doesn't. So you would need your spacesuit for the entire trip, unless you plan on staying in one place for hundreds of years. There are no known creatures that can survive on Uranus, but this doesn't mean that they don't exist. Microbes could potentially live in some of the deeper layers of Uranus where it is warmer. Microbes have been found thriving in extreme environments on Earth, such as deep in the ocean where there is no sunlight. Some microbes survive near volcanoes where there is a lot of heat, and some microbes survive in very salty environments. These microbes evolved to survive in harsh environments, and microbes on Uranus would likely do the same. But what about larger creatures? Well, there is a good reason why you don't see any large animals on Uranus, or any of the other ice giants in the solar system, Neptune and Saturn. There is simply no oxygen. Without oxygen, creatures wouldn't be able to breathe. And also, without oxygen, rust forms on metal. Rust forms when iron or another metal is exposed to water and oxygen. When metals rust, they become brittle. So if a creature on Uranus were to have a skeleton made of metal, it would quickly become brittle and break down. If a creature on Uranus didn't have a hard skeleton, it would be very difficult to support its body. For example, jellyfish live in Earth's oceans, but they are supported by the water. If a jellyfish lived on Uranus, the low gravity would cause it to float away. In fact, the gravity on Uranus is only 89% that of Earth, so it's actually slightly lower than Earth's gravity. But what if there were creatures that evolved to survive the extreme conditions on Uranus? Would they look anything like Earth creatures? Maybe you've seen the movie Avatar, where the main character travels to a faraway planet called Pandora. On Pandora, there are lots of large creatures and the main character rides a big blue horse-like creature. Well, this planet isn't too different from Uranus. On Pandora, there is a lot of rain and it's very hot. In fact, the hottest temperature ever recorded on Pandora was 35 degrees Celsius. So creatures on Pandora evolved to survive the heat and the rain. If creatures evolved on Uranus, they would likely have thick fur or feathers to keep them warm. They would also need to be able to survive without oxygen. Creatures on Uranus could potentially use oxygen from the small amount of atmosphere that Uranus has, but I doubt that there would be enough oxygen to sustain life. So creatures on Uranus would likely need to carry oxygen around with them, similar to how scuba divers carry oxygen tanks. We don't know what type of creatures could evolve on Uranus, but maybe one day we will find out. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.